نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين، يا خاتم النبيين، يا شفيع المذنبين، يا أنيس الغريبين، يا رحمة للعالمين، صلى الله عليه وسلم. صلاة وسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. I titled today's, I guess, talk or class, Halves and the Whole. There's various places where Rasulullah ﷺ talks about half of Iman or half of Deen. And then there is one very specific place where he talks about all of Iman, the whole of Iman, kullu Iman. And so inshallah we'll talk about this. Of course, part of the problem when we talk about anything is that, when you're talking about something, the people that really need to be listening aren't even there. So inshallah maybe they'll see the video. But anyway, one time, after Jummah, one person approached me and he said, you need to talk about the etiquettes of the khutbah and stuff. And I said, well, I already talked about that, but you weren't there. So, can't do anything about that. Because those are the folks who are the last in and the first out. So, and I'm also going to tie this, at least the last part of this, the whole part, to a question that was raised last week. When we talk about those who are, in essence, kind of playing the role of a Muslim, but not having anything to do with Islam. When you have people that you need to avoid and stuff, how do you recognize them? So that will tie into that whole, even though it's also related to the parts. So as we know, one of the more famous statements of Rasulullah ﷺ as far as concerning halves is where he said, At-taharatu nifsul iman, that cleanliness is half of Iman. So here, one thing to understand, because if you start adding up the hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ says this is half, this is half, this is half, you get more than a whole. This is to emphasize the significance of something. This is just a general speech where, something is being emphasized, that, this carries a lot of weight, foundationally and in other aspects. So when we talk about tahara, most of us think just cleanliness physically. But here it's not just the physical cleanliness, but it's the spiritual cleanliness, and then cleanliness or the purity of the intention, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah is pure and accepts only what is pure. So the purity here is talking about the purity of intention. Because sometimes the outcomes, even though we may intend good, but maybe the outcome's not quite right. Okay. And if the intention is truly pure, then even if the outcome doesn't seem right in the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fixes it in the end. And this is the sunnah of Allah. So when we talk about cleanliness again, all of these, the spiritual, the physical, all of these are connected. The thought, the cleanliness of the thought, the heart, the spirit, every aspect being clean, and one is simply an extension of the other. So one of the major aspects that we see this in, as far as what's obvious, and here one thing to understand also is that sometimes someone may look clean from the outside, but the inside is not. However, in general, the reverse is not true. So if they're dirty from the outside, then they're probably dirty from the inside. And I'll explain that in a second. And an analogy to that is one time a man was making salat in front of Rasulullah ﷺ, and as he's making salat, he's playing with his beard. And Rasulullah says that he has no khushu, he has no concentration in his salat. If he had concentration, he wouldn't be playing with his beard. Okay. So, but the reverse may not be true. You may see somebody who physically seems very still and calm in their salat, but they're still not focused on what they're supposed to be focused. They're still in calm because they're thinking about something else. Okay. So you have to kind of, so just because part of it's true doesn't mean the rest of it's true. So that's an important point to understand here. So when we look at like the physical cleanliness, again, there are certain places that are inherently dirty, or rather we think of them as inherently dirty. One of those places is the bathroom. We also know that the water of the wudu, once we've made the wudu, the water that comes from us now is also impure because it's carrying with it, if we did the wudu properly, it's carrying with it those sins that were connected to those parts of the body that you were washing. So also wudu is not simply physically cleaning, it should be cleaning you spiritually as well. It should be wiping away your sins as well. If you're making wudu with the correct intention and properly. So this, of course, for the places of worship is a big issue, because here where we make salat, this is supposed to be very, very clean. And yet you have people that walk into the bathrooms without sandals. And then they turn around, they make wudu, feet are still wet, and they drag all that stuff here into the wudu, in the salat place that we're making salat. Or they'll go into the bathroom and just barefooted and come out and just, again. Even in your homes, you should have a separate set of slippers for the bathroom that are just connected to that. Because when you go in, and again, it might be, your bathroom may be cleaner than some other places in your home in appearance, but still, it's inherently a place that filthy things are done. Okay? And, if you also, if you look at like slow motion images when they flush a toilet with color dye in it, fluorescent dye in it, and you see, you don't see that, but you see those, on the camera you can see, your naked eye couldn't see it, but now you can see all these droplets everywhere. And then you're walking in it. And then, like one of the aspects of not wearing clothes that drag is also an aspect of cleanliness. And of course, you go to the bathroom with clothes that are dragging and touching and everything, and, you think you're still clean. No, you're not. This gets back to that analogy, and because everything will come back to taqwa, as we'll see. The analogy that Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu gave of taqwa was that you're walking through an area with a lot of thorns. You're walking through an area full of thorn bushes. And he says taqwa is where, I'm protecting my clothes from getting any stuck. And this is the analogy he's drawing. That's how you need to lead your life. Is that you're protecting yourself from all of those things that take you away from Allah and His Messenger. So that's the analogy. Same analogy here we can use for cleanliness. And this is also part of taqwa. That taqwa is to get through life keeping everything clean. Protecting yourself in that manner. So there's a lot that can be said about this. But, as I was saying earlier as well, when we're making wudu, we're not just cleaning ourselves physically. You think about it, okay, I just made wudu. Okay, now I pass gas. Well, what does me passing gas have to do with washing my hands and my arms and everything else? Why do I need to do that? Because again, this is, that is a sign of uncleanliness. You've excreted something. So even though you excreted it only from a certain portion of your body, but it's connected to the rest of you. And this becomes an excuse now to wash away more sins. And this is why Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, when he would make wudu, he would put on an apron as to avoid getting any of the wudu water onto his clothes. Because he, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had gifted him, because of his connection to Ahlul Bayt and connection to Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had gifted him with a sight that he could see which sins were being washed off of who's making wudu. He asked later on, "Oh Allah, take this away from me, so then I have usna done. I don't want to see that. I don't want to know what the people are doing. Otherwise you have bad opinions of everybody." Right? But he could see which sins were being washed off. This gets back to where Rasulullah said, "Fear the sight of a mu'min because he sees through the nur of Allah." So again, all of this, is connected, and this is why, cleanliness is something that, again, Rasulullah said, this is half of your iman. And if you fail in that half, and the reason he's telling you this is half, it isn't because it's equal to the other half. This is the foundation of the other half. So if your intentions are not pure, if you're, physically not clean, if you're spiritually not pure, if that tazkiyah, the purification of the heart, has not taken place, then the rest of everything else has no meaning. Because the foundation's wrong. So you build a house, without a foundation, what's going to happen? It's not going to work. Or, concrete that, you pour concrete and it should have been 4,000 psi, but it's really only 1,000 psi. What's going to happen? Yeah, you put the building up, it's going to look nice for a while. And then shortly thereafter, it's going to start cracking and falling and breaking apart. And this is why, again, all of these things are the reason that the ummah is in the condition that it's in. Because this is what's going on. We're putting these lofty buildings on a foundation that has no meaning. Because, the interesting thing is we talk about, like, all of these problems that are in our lives. The solution is the same. The solution always comes back to connecting ourselves with Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which then connects us to Ahlul Bayt, which then connects us to the Quran. And so again, this is that aspect. So I'm not going to dwell on this anymore. But there is a difference, because we talk about hadith where, like Mus'ab bin Umar, radiyallahu anhu. He had like dust on him and stuff. Dust, or like Ali was known as Abu Turab. That's not impurity. You get dust on you, big deal. All right? And here, the dust is blessed because it touched him. There's a difference in kind of like someone who works hard. He's working on the car, and he's got all this grease on him. Okay, yeah, he may look dirty, but he's not. That's not dirty. That's not impure Islamically. Yeah. And the other interesting aspect of that, one time this man was there. He came to the masjid. His hands were very, very rough. Hard-working man. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called him forward and rubbed his hands. He says that Allah loves these hands. And these days, no one wants to work hard. So again, some people may, they look dusty, but that's not impurity. And you have other people who look very clean, yet they're filthy. Because they got all those invisible droplets on them. Or they drug it, or they drug their clothes through there, and you can't tell, the clothes were dark colored, so you can't tell, what's really brown and what's what. So, okay, so just, I'll end this part of it with this. The other thing, and this is less well known, but it's still in certain circles well known, of the saying of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. One narration, and I'll talk about two narrations. One narration is that, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, more or less, and this hadith is in Bayhaqi and a couple of other places, where he says that when a man becomes married, he has completed half of his faith, half of his deen, so let him fear Allah for the other half. Okay. This narration is weak. Just because it's weak doesn't mean it's not, accurate though. The other narration, which is in Imam Hakim's Mustadrak. So Mustadrak is a compilation of hadith that he compiled according to the criteria of Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. Okay, so this has the same narrators, and so the same level of scrutiny. In that one, he says that Rasulullah says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a man a pious wife, he has given him half of his deen. So let him fear Allah for the other half. Again, pointing toward taqwa. That other half pointing toward taqwa. But here, if you look at the Muslim world today, there is a crisis. In this, just like there is a crisis in everything else. Where you have so many people, and especially like in certain Muslim countries where so many women can't get married or aren't getting married. And then you have those who do get married, and then those marriages don't end well. As far as the ones that don't end well, there are multiple factors there, but the main factor comes back to fearing Allah for the other half, that taqwa. Having that connection to Allah and His Messenger, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that a man marries for 4 reasons. He marries a woman for 4 reasons. For her beauty, for her wealth, for her status, and for her deen. And he said that the best reason is for her deen. But as we've talked about before, and we spoke about, for those who are at the weddings and various weddings that I've spoken about, and where my dad would speak, one of the things we pointed out was in Surah Rum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. That amongst Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that amongst His signs is that He has created you. He has created from you, for you, your wives. And He, so that you may find tranquility in them. Okay? And He is the one who has placed the love and the mercy between them. And in this is a sign for those who ponder or reflect. So if you look at this statement, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that He is the one who placed the love and the mercy. Just like, where He says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. So everybody talks about this part of the verse. That where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that all of you hold fast to the rope of Allah all together and do not be divided. But if you look at the rest of the verse, in the rest of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you how not to be divided and why He will join you. And it also mentions that it is His favor that He has placed love between your hearts, even though you are enemies to each other. So the same thing here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala it's the favor of Allah that He has placed the love between the husband and the wife. Right? Now if you look at like certain places, one of the issues that you have is that, like, girl can't get married because the family has such expectations of who they're supposed to get her married to. Unrealistic expectations. And he has to be from a certain group. If he's not from this group, we can't. And they don't find anybody. All right. Which, of course, all of this is un-Islamic. Because Rasulullah also said that do not delay in certain things, and one of the things that he said do not delay in is to get your daughters married when you find a suitable husband. Of course, you have the unreal expectations from both sides, from the boy and the girl. And the girl, she wants some movie actor. Because they've been watching all these movies and they can't settle for anyone less than some movie star. Okay. And he's got to have this and this and then on top of that, the mindset is he's going to marry me and then I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Again, all un-Islamic. And the guy, he wants this highly educated girl, educated from the standpoint of the world. So she's got to be a doctor or engineer or something, okay? And he doesn't even know how to spell it. Yeah. And she also has to be an actress, right? Movie star. And his nose, is upside down. So, just these unrealistic expectations, and a lot of this is because of social media these days. The vast majority of this is people are living in this fool's paradise, unrealistic world. They watch these TV shows and movies and that's them. They think that's them. And they watch a show, somebody riding a horse, and, I got to be riding a horse now. Or somebody's doing this, and that's what they're doing. And that's their whole life. There is no thought anymore. And then the other aspect of this is that, unfortunately, people enter marriage or approach marriage from the mindset now. See, it used to be that, families and the husband and wife approach the marriage from this mindset of, we're going to make this work. I mean, you have legitimate reasons where you have divorce. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed it. But then, but when you're approaching it from the mindset of, like today, of, we'll try it out, and if it doesn't work, we'll go our separate ways. Which means you've already intended on going your separate way, because you're never going to be satisfied. Again, un-Islamic thought processes. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not place that love there, because the beginning's messed up. Other aspects of this also, you have, or rather, let me put it this way, the easier way to put it. The solution is all the same, as I said earlier. The solution is to have taqwa. And if both sides enter it with taqwa, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place the love. And taqwa, of course, is the love. It is, as most people say, righteousness, piety, all of these things. But the reality of taqwa is to humble yourself before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, the best amongst you is the one who is best to his wives, and I am the best to my wives. So why does he say that in the end? One is that he wants to make sure that we don't start thinking, I'm good to my wife, so I'm better than somebody else. And we understand he is the best. So he is that character. Because everybody thinks, oh, I'm good to my wife because I spoil her. That's not the way Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did. You look at the houses that they lived in, their houses were literally one room that was essentially like 9 feet by 14 feet. That was it. That was the house. The houses of the Muslims at that time did not have indoor plumbing, as far as indoor plumbing in the sense of bathrooms. So the Muslims would go out. These were the houses of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The women they would go out in the cover of the darkness to go and relieve themselves, including the wives of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's interesting when you start reading the narrations from the wives of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam about him. He said, there's one narration where Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says that, Aisha Siddiqa, she has command of 2/3 of their deen. Another one, she said, take half of your religion from her. Which half? The half of inside the household. This is why, when she later on, during, at the martyrdom of Uthman, rather than the beginning of Khilafah of Ali, when she took those steps, she herself realized this is not for her. And this is why Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had told Ali, when this happens, treat her gently and return her to her place safely. And this is what he did. But these narrations, because normally under general conditions, what happens between the husband and the wife stays between the husband and the wife. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not like people talking about, what, their wife did or what their husband did. Okay. But we know this from them because we needed examples. So these are exceptions. And there are certain other exceptions to that. Okay. So, like we know from Aisha radiallahu anha, the mother of the believers, the wife of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, she said, that he would be helping out with household chores. He wouldn't cook. He didn't cook, but cutting this, doing that. We know that he would stitch his own shoes. Either him or Ali would stitch his shoes, or his own clothes. But she said that he would be sitting with her, talking to her like a husband and wife would be talking, and when the adhan would be called, she said he was a different person. Because his whole focus now is where he wants it to be, is back on his, we're also different people when the adhan is called, because we're figuring out, okay, how do I get out of here? It's the reality of today, unfortunately. But coming back to that aspect of what happens between the husband and wife should stay between the husband and wife, we see this being violated openly today. Everything's posted. And even if you claim that, it's just for private, nothing online is private. So this is a huge violation of the basic tenets of Islam. Violation, and this all gets back to the taqwa of humbling ourselves before Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which means what? That before we have controlled our nafs, there are going to be things that, okay, this is what we know we should do, because this is what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wants us to do, but our nafs is going to be pulling us in a different direction. That struggle, is what we have to do. Once we've subdued our nafs, or rather those who have subdued their nafs, there's a different issue. But that is not the general person. So we think, oh no, Islam says this, but I don't like that, so I'm going to justify this, or I'm just going to do something else anyway. Then we're going to have problems in our lives. And here also, since we're talking about marriage, you want to be married, or you want to have a partner who has the same aqidah as you. In these major things, you have to be the same. Otherwise, she's going to start talking about Rasulullah like anybody else, or he's going to talk about Rasulullah in this disrespectful manner. That's not going to work. If you're true to your deen, then that's not going to work. But there are things that you have to be different in. Otherwise, it won't work. You get husband and wife, both of them who like to talk a lot. That's going to be rough. Who's listening? No one's listening. They're just talking. So you have to have one who can talk and one who can stay silent. So again, certain things, yeah, you need to be different in, but there are things you need to be very much in line. And the thing is, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this, He didn't just give us orders. It's interesting if we look at all the previous books. All of the previous books were all revealed all at once. Surah Al-Furqan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this by putting it in the form of a question that the Quraysh had asked Rasulullah. Then why did they ask? They asked this because their Jewish friends had told them, ask this question. And what is the question? The question is, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفْرُوا لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ الْقُرْآنُ جُمْلَةً وَاحِدَةً. So the question is, why isn't this Quran revealed all together, all at once, one word? Because the law, the heavenly law was that the books would reveal all at once. So if you look at, the Torah, the Zabur, the Injil, the Sahifa that were sent to Musa alayhi salam, to Ibrahim alayhi salam, to Nuh alayhi salam, to the various other Rasuls, and the booklets, they all came down at once. So this is why. So the question why is this rule? Why is this law changed? This is the heavenly law. How come it's different for you? Why is the Quran being revealed piece by piece? And so the next part of the verse gives the answer. وَكَذَلِكَ نُثَبِّهِ فُعَادَكَ, for the satisfaction of your heart. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed the rule, this heavenly rule, for the pleasure of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because the Quran, and we mentioned this so many times, it is a conversation between Allah and His beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the Quran being that conversation, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't want the conversation to end. Because if it came out all at once, there'd be an end to the conversation. This is why the Quran is also the only book in which there is the law of abrogation. Not only did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam come to abrogate previous laws, but even within the Quran there are stages to certain laws that came. Others there are not, but the certain ones there are. And so you have that law of abrogation because it's revealed piece by piece. So when we look at this aspect of things, this is why we see, like with again previous books, okay, everything's being brought down at once, and it's okay, do this. You have no criteria like with the Quran. And Ali radiallahu anhu made this, is this only one who can make this statement. And all of the companions acknowledged this, that he was the only one who could tell you about each and every verse as to when it was revealed, where it was revealed, why it was revealed, what was the context of the revelation, for whom it was revealed, all of those aspects of the Quran. For every verse he knew. And if companions, they had any questions, and that's why many of the companions, they said that if we hear something from an authentic source relating it to Ali, said Ali said this about this, we didn't need to ask any further. All right? So when I look at the other books, okay, the law is revealed, but there's no context as to, okay, why was this revealed? If the context isn't within the verses themselves, you don't have any exterior context to understand it. Whereas with the Quran, not only are the verses being revealed, but even before the verses are being revealed, we have the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What is connecting this verse to him? What happened that caused this verse to be revealed? Which gives us such a much more broad understanding of the verse. So again, this is only the Quran because of its connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's another important point, to understand here, and especially like when we're talking about marriage and the love that Allah places there. Why we see in various so-called Muslim countries now all these issues that are ongoing, because we have abandoned taqwa. He said, okay, you've gotten married, so you've completed half of your deen, now fear Allah for the other half. That means, if you expect this to continue on, then you need to do the other half. Okay. So, we start off with Taharat al-Nifs al-Iman, that cleanliness is half of your faith. And then we went over the narration or the hadith of Rasulullah, another hadith of Rasulullah, where he says that if Allah gives someone a pious wife, then He has given him half of his deen. Let him fear Allah for the other half. Right. But he also mentioned what is the whole, and we're going to get into why He is the whole, and that connection to that question of how do you recognize who is who? How do you recognize who you should be spending time with and basically, attaching yourself to, and who you need to be avoiding, and especially in the Muslim world today, because this is a major issue. So, Battle of Khandaq, so the Battle of the Trench. The trench that they had dug was 30 feet wide, 20 feet deep, 3 miles long. And whenever I mention those dimensions, I always mention the interesting aspect of those dimensions. Not the 3 miles long. The 3 mile long is because that's the area they had to cover, to keep the army from coming in. The rest of it was already blockaded by volcanic rock. But if you look at those dimensions, 30 feet. You look at, world record long jump. 29 feet and some odd inches. It's not 30 feet. And these are guys who are jumping with, basically shorts on. They're not carrying any weight. They don't have any armor on. They ain't got nothing. If you look at the jumps of horses, they don't make that. And especially if they got a rider on it, like equestrian, you see them jumping. You don't see them jumping 30 feet. It's a rarity if they do, and there was one that did. So if you jump 20 feet, that's 2 stories. Most people, if they jump 20 feet, they're going to break something. And it's, again, especially if you're wearing armor, and you got your sword and, everything else, you're going to really be in a mess. So that's why those dimensions are very interesting, that Rasulullah SAW picked these dimensions. Okay. So the one that did cross that barrier was Amr bin Abdul. So Amr is this older warrior amongst Quraysh. He'd been in like 60 battles, undefeated, no one even close. He's one of those old dudes that's still very, very powerful. So like, you watch the old kung fu movies, that old master who comes and, everybody, all these young guys trying to fight him and they fight each other and, of course, they're doing all this stuff and then the old guy comes and he does a little something and they all fall down. That's Amr. Okay? So people, you heard the name of Amr and it was like, oh, wow. Okay. Amr came in the Battle of Badr, but he had an injury. He was a smart fighter too. He had an injury, so he didn't partake in the fighting. And especially when he saw what was happening to Quraysh, he also left with them. Yeah. So now he finally comes. So Amr, he crosses with his horse. And he calls out. And his call out was interesting because he says, is there anyone who wants to go to paradise that is willing to come and fight me so I can send him to paradise? He's, of course, saying this mockingly, sarcastically. Come on, let me send you to your Jannah. Of course, he doesn't believe in Jannah, but okay. Yeah. So he makes this call. Rasulullah SAW is in his tent with some of the companions. And when he makes the call, Ali radhan gets up. And Ali radhan starts to walk out. Rasulullah SAW says, Ali, sit down. This is Amr. Ali radhan, again, he makes the call again. And Ali radhan again gets up. And again, Rasulullah SAW tells him, this is Amr. And now the third time he makes the call. And now Rasulullah SAW calls him, yeah, this is Amr, but this is why I'm calling you back. He takes his own turban off and places it on the head of Ali. There are many companions who are given many things from the Rasulullah. But you don't see anybody other than Ali, where Rasulullah himself placed his own turban on his head, or took his own cloak off and placed it on the shoulders of Ali himself. So Ali radhiyallahu steps out with Zulfiqar in hand. And Zulfiqar itself, in reality, is the sword of Rasulullah. We've talked about that history, so I won't go over it again today. As he's walking out, as he's walking toward Amr, Rasulullah, he makes a statement. He says, Kullu iman, all of iman, all of faith. We like to talk about, again, half of faith, but here, this is all of faith. The whole is heavier than the half. This is all of faith. He says, Kullu iman is going to fight all of disbelief. And you think about this 10,000 man army that had come against the Muslims. they come and they see the trench and they can't do anything. They rain arrows, they do this, they do that, but in the end they can't do anything. Who is the only one who crosses? Amr. And you had certain skirmishes where some people, they got around the side and stuff like this. But again, this is the only, I guess what you'd call, veteran fighter. One of their heroes, the hero of Quraysh, who has come. He is representing this whole army, who is a representation of all of disbelief. So you have him on one side, all of disbelief. And here you have all of belief. Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh. So if he is all of belief, then it also tells us that he is perfection in all of the other halves of belief. So his purity is also, his cleanliness is perfect. His family life, the way he deals with his wife, the way he deals with his family is perfect. Because he's representing all of belief. And this isn't me saying this. This is the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saying this is all of belief. And since I started this, I'll end the story for those who don't know. And for those who've heard this before, it'll just be a refresher. So when Ali, when he goes, so Amr, he asked, of course, Ali, who knew he was, but it was customary that time, even the disbelievers had a level of decency. So they didn't want to be fighting somebody who they didn't know who they were fighting. And these days, they kill millions of people and don't even know who they killed. It's just, unfortunately, the way it is now. There is no decency. So even then, even the disbelievers had a level of some decency. So he asked Ali, and he says, "Who are you?" And Ali says, "Ali." And he says, "Ali bin Uthman?" Because there was a person named Ali bin Uthman. He said, "No, Ali bin Abi Talib." And so Amr says, he said, "Look, I don't want to fight you because of a favor that your father did to me." Hazrat Abu Talib had done many favors to many people in Quraysh, which is also why simply his name kept them from doing anything worse to Rasulullah than they did. Simply his name was what protected, of course, protection in the end is from Allah, but how is Allah doing this? There are means. He's doing it through this name. And so, and unfortunately in today's environment, I have to say that, but, before it used to be understood. Yeah. So, when he says Ali bin Abi Talib, he said, "Look, I don't want to fight you because of a favor your father did to me." He says, "Look," Ali says, "Look, I'm not leaving until this is decided. So either you have to fight me, or, there's no other way out." But then Ali, he says, "But I've been told, I've heard, that you say that if your opponent requests 3 things from you," somebody needs to mute their phone. Okay, good.
Can everybody please mute their phone? Please mute your phone. Thank you.
Okay. So he says, "But I've been told that, if your opponent requests 3 things from you, you will fulfill one of those requests." He said, "Yes." This is one of his claims. So he said, fine. He says, then I request that you become Muslim. You accept Islam. He says, I can't do that, because what will the people say? And this is an issue with a lot of people, and especially as they get older. And even young people today. It's like, okay, well, what are they going to say? And the reality is, in the end, they don't care about you anyway. If they cared, they would be pushing you toward this deen anyway. And you can't disobey Allah and His Messenger worrying about what the people will say. There are places where, it's important to understand what the people will say. If they're gonna push you towards good, then you want to worry about what they're saying, because they become the good people that are pushing you towards what's right. Okay. So he said, I can't do that. He says, then fine. He says, then leave. Don't fight. Just go back. And the same basic answer is, then the people will call me a coward. And he ran away from the battle. He says, then you have only one other choice, which is to fight me. So that's the third request, is you fight. So he says, fine, I will fight you. But he says to Ali, he says, you strike first. You initiate the blow, and then we will go from there. And Ali says, look, if I initiate the blow, there will be no one to do a second blow. Which, of course, when you have a guy who's undefeated in 60 battles, there's some of that ego in there. And that ego got hit the wrong way now. When Ali says, look, if I strike you, there's not going to be anything left to strike back. So now he comes towards Ali with his weapon, and he strikes, and Ali catches on his arm, but it dented the shield, and he did injure the arm of Ali. It was a strong blow. And so Ali, he says, Allah, after he blocks this, he says, Allahu Akbar, and jumps up, and he comes down, and he cuts Amr into two pieces, and the sword Zulfiqar still doesn't stop. There was a stone underneath it, and it stuck into the stone. And that mark in the stone, at least in the early 70s, was still there. I don't know if it's still there now. If they've moved the stone, or it's still there. So even, 1,400 years of weathering didn't get rid of that mark. So that whole story, and of course when he does this, then everybody, when the dust settles, then everybody's saying, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So that whole story, just to emphasize that Ali is kullu iman, he is all of iman. This ties into that question that we got last week, where the question was basically, okay, how do you know? These people who are going to bait and switch you, take you from what is the proper understanding to something else, from the proper aqidah, from the proper belief system to something else. And so, as I said last week, the basis of this is the love of Allah and His Messenger. So anything that takes you away from that, is wrong. Okay. So anyone who finds fault within the Messenger of Allah, finds weaknesses within him. So, anyone who challenges his knowledge, questions his authority, all of these things, this guy is messed up. All right. But there are extensions to that. And so Ali radiallahu anhu is an extension to that, in the sense that Rasulullah, he said that only a believer will love you, to Ali, and only a hypocrite will have animosity against you. Because there are going to be plenty of believers, or there are going to be plenty of hypocrites who know because of the environment that at least officially and in this, they have to put on this facade of accepting Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in a certain manner. Because if they don't, they know that they will be caught and they'll be called out. So they're, okay, because everybody will say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But amongst those who say that, you're going to have the hypocrites. So now how do you distinguish who is who? Right? So that becomes that criteria. Okay, look at their, so you look at, first you look at the attitude towards Allah and His Messenger, then you look at the attitude towards Ali. And you look at, and when you look at the attitudes towards Ali, you also look at the attitudes towards the rest of the household. Towards Bibi Fatima Salamullah alayha, towards Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Are they finding faults in them? And if they are, then you know, okay, these are hypocrites. You know, those who say, oh, you know, she made a mistake when she asked for fida. You know that's a hypocrite. Or, you know, simply, you know, Ali, you know, he shouldn't have done that, he should have done this. That's a hypocrite. You know, there are other criteria as well, that like a criteria that Abu Bakr gave us. Ya Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For those who say, oh, you can't say Ya with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, okay, yeah, this guy's messed up. Yeah. So there are many criteria here that we have, you know, and it's kind of really looking at the whole. But again, it's not that complicated either. I don't have to go far to look, you know, and you know, simply, and especially, you know, you get somebody in a conversation and you start pulling things out. And you say, and this is where, you know, the companions, they would say that, you know, if we wanted to know who was who, we'd simply take the name of Ali and we could tell from the face. You know, because animosity is hard to hide. You start talking about Ali, and then okay, they become very uneasy, and then they have to divert that towards, oh, look at this other companion, look at him, or see Abu Bakr or Umar. Okay, well, you know, I understand, you know, Abu Bakr and Umar, their maqam, their status, their position, high positions, but I'm not talking about them right now. Why are you so uncomfortable? Because if you start talking about Abu Bakr or Umar, then no one says, oh, what about Ali? Well, I mean, no one says that, which is funny. But amongst those who claim to be Sunnis, you see this, the other way, you see this a lot these days. But again, these are people who are telling you who they are. And when someone tells you who they are, believe them. Benefit of the doubt is, okay, you know, okay, I don't, you know, benefit of doubt is, you know, when there's leeway. And when you look at these people today, you start quickly realizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposes them very quickly as well. You know, like, simple example like Tariq Masood. He's been talking all this nonsense, you know, about Mawlid, about, you know, various other aspects, about Ahlul Bayt. People still don't get it. So now he just comes out bluntly and says, oh, there are grammatical mistakes in the Quran. And the crazier aspect of that is people still don't get it. I mean, they still don't get it, who he is. And of course, you know, he's just one example. I'm mentioning him because of the recent issues. You start going back, and it's like, okay, yeah, there's a problem here, there's a problem there. Okay, there's a lot of problems. But the criteria is not that difficult. Any questions? I covered, I guess, 2 or 3 things today. I'm sure there'll, of course, questions generally come up when we leave. Oh, I should have asked that. But like I said early on, the solution to all of the problems is the same. It's taqwa, it's coming back to Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, humbling ourselves, understanding our low positions, and humbling ourselves before the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may accept us.
And another question, आपने बताया अकीदे का, अगर कोई मुस्लिम फैमिली या मुस्लिम मेल या फीमेल के पास प्रपोजल हो, अकीदा अपोजिट हो, बट हो वो मुस्लिम. और दूसरा क्वेश्चन, अगर क्योंकि सोसाइटी में नॉन मुस्लिम है, अगर किसी मुस्लिम मेल फीमेल के पास कोई प्रपोजल हो नॉन मुस्लिम का, तो उनको क्या करना चाहिए?
So the question is, because I brought up when we were talking about the marriage aspect, about aqidah. Okay. So, and I said the aqidah should be the same. So the question is, if you have let's simple example, if a man, there's a proposal of marrying a woman, and the woman or her family's aqidah is not quite proper. There you also have to look at how improper is it. And you also have to look at the individual. So, if you have somebody's aqidah who and their aqidah is, the Quran has mistakes in it, that's, or that Bibi Fatima made a mistake, or that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so, and these are aqidahs where they're just blatant about. That's not going to work, and you need to move on. But if you have like someone whose aqidah, okay, like the family's aqidah might be messed up, but that individual's, may not be, and they're willing to understand and to know, then that changes the situation there. Okay. So you have to kind of balance that out. As far as like the other part of the question was like, like the proposal from a non-Muslim. Okay. So now, we know that Muslim women cannot, it is forbidden for them to marry anyone outside of Islam. Period. Doesn't matter whether they're a Christian or a Jew or what. Okay. That's, and these days, like in India, where you get like, like Hindu boy marrying a Muslim girl, or a Muslim girl or a Muslim boy marrying a Hindu girl, that's not even a marriage. Islamically not accepted. Okay. Islamically, however, like a Muslim man can marry from the people of the book, meaning Christian or Jew. Okay. But there are criteria for that as well. It is different, like in some people's situation where, okay, they become Muslim, but their spouse has not become Muslim. Okay, so the spouse is Christian, the husband's Muslim, so now you got this marriage, but that marriage was from before. So now that's a very different situation. Okay? But in the situation before the marriage, the man is Muslim, and he proposes to a non-Muslim, and here non-Muslim meaning people from the book, Christian or Jew, female. That is permitted under the condition that she is chaste. And if you look at the verse in the Quran, it mentions that. But there are other conditions where also the children have to be Muslim. So you have to have, that can only be done in an environment where that is possible. Which if I analyze the environment today, and especially like environments in non-Muslim countries, that's, yeah. Okay. So that becomes, again, a different issue. Okay. you know, and in today's environment, unfortunately, you know, especially with social media, you know, it's hard enough keeping Muslim children Muslim.
Yes.
You know, because, you know, you think you're doing everything right, and, you know, it's very disturbing how people's perceptions are so messed up now because of social media, because of, you know, the internet, where you're saying one thing and later on they're telling you said something else. It's like, that's might be what you heard, but that's not what I said. Yeah. And so, yeah, so this is part of the fitna. Any other questions? No. Well, I'm going to end a little early today, inshallah, if there are no other questions. So, you know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to understand and to give us the correct understanding, which only comes with His true love and the true love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as the household and the companions and all of those whom they love. And may give strength and protection and victory to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Palestine and Sudan and wherever, you know, people are being oppressed unjustly, and may He give them victory over their oppressors. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.